Hi everyone, my name is Melissa van Dijk, and in today's video I want to talk about how I cleared my hormonal acne naturally. Now the biggest thing that changed my skin was honestly not what I expected at all. What finally made my acne make sense was realizing that hormones were not the full explanation. My breakouts were much more connected to water retention, hidden sodium, and the state my body was in before the breakout appeared. Because when we talk about hormonal acne, we usually explain it as hormones increase oil, the pores clog, bacteria gets involved, and then acne forms. But what confused me for years was that before the breakout even appeared, my whole body already felt different. My digestion slowed down, I felt like I was holding on to more water, and the same foods suddenly affected me much more around 10 days before my period than they did at other times. And somehow I missed that for almost 2 years of daily tracking. I did not pay attention to sodium at first. I was looking at the foods themselves, not the sodium hidden inside them. But once I started paying attention to it, I could not really unsee it anymore. Hidden sodium was the strongest pattern that kept showing up before my breakouts. And I think this is why it is so easy to miss. Because if you buy packaged foods, canned foods, restaurant food, takeout, or even street foods, you usually do not really see how much sodium is in there. So from the outside, it looks like the foods keep changing. One time it looks like pizza caused the breakout, another time it looks like cheese, another time it looks like fermented foods, then sauces, olives, takeout, or some random restaurant meal. But for me it was not really about the food name. The sodium spike was the pattern. And because it was never just one food, I honestly thought that made the hormone explanation even more likely. I thought, okay, maybe it is really just hormonal dysfunction. Or maybe it is just normal as a woman that my skin reacts more before my period. But what made me completely change perspective was that the breakouts were usually worse when my body was already in a more water-retaining state, especially before my period. That changed how I looked at hormonal acne, and honestly breakouts in general. Because I really do not think hormonal acne is only about hormones making more oil, or about the oil somehow being bad and then that skin cells clogging the pore. That never fully made sense to me as the beginning of the story. Maybe that was the end result of the chain. Maybe that is what finally happens in the pore. But I think before that, the entire state of the body can change. The water retention, the swelling, the pressure in the tissue, and the way the skin becomes more reactive. And sodium is not just sitting somewhere in the middle of that. Sodium can be what starts that whole water retention pattern. Once sodium goes up, the body can hold on to more water. The face can become puffier and the pressure in the skin can increase. And then the breakout follows. And that is why this made so much more sense to me than just blaming hormones in this vague way. Because the thing I was feeling before the breakout, the puffiness, the swelling, the pressure, the water retention, was exactly the system sodium affects. And once I saw that, the whole pattern made so much more sense. Before that, I kept chasing one specific trigger food. I looked at sugar, I looked at dairy, gluten, histamine, fermented foods, saturated fat, and basically every mainstream acne theory you can imagine. And honestly, some of them did make sense for a while, because certain foods did really seem to affect my skin. But then the same problem kept coming back. The pattern was inconsistent. The same food could be completely fine one week and then suddenly seem to break me out another week. That is why sodium became such a huge clue for me, because sodium was one of the first things that actually connected those inconsistent reactions together. Especially because hormonal acne already has such an obvious connection to water retention. We already talk about feeling puffier before periods. We already know many women feel more swollen, heavier, and more reactive during certain cycle phases. And we already know sodium affects how much water the body holds on to. And honestly, I would not only look at this with period acne. even with perimenopause or menopause, where hormones shift in a completely different way, I would still ask the same thing. Is the skin reacting because the whole body has become more water retaining, more swollen and inflamed? Because to me, even then, sodium can still be one of the biggest things to look at. The hormonal situation may be different, but the fluid retention pattern may still be the same. So at some point I started wondering, why is this never discussed when we talk about hormonal acne? Why does the conversation immediately jump to oil and clogged pores, when so many of us can literally feel it, like the swelling, puffiness and the pressure before the breakout even appears? Because for me, that was the missing piece. And the biggest improvement came from reducing the overall sodium load of my diet and going back to simpler whole foods. I stopped making so many of my meals salty without realizing it, through sauces, processed foods, takeout, restaurant meals, cheese-heavy meals, marinades, canned foods, and packaged foods. And once I did that, my skin changed pretty quickly. So if you're dealing with hormonal acne and the usual explanations never explained your patterns, I would honestly pay attention to sodium and water retention. And I would also not only look at the obvious junk food, because sodium can also be hidden in foods that look healthy, like canned foods, soups, sauces, pickled foods, fermented foods, ready-made meals, protein products, and even foods marketed as clean or healthy. So I would not just assume I eat healthy so it cannot be sodium, because that was exactly how I missed it for so long. For me, reducing that excess was the key I had missed the whole time. And once I reduced that excess, my hormonal acne finally started clearing. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!